Oh, it's so cold. All right, you get to go, Becky.
All right, thanks. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, September 30th, 2021, and ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, September 23rd, 2021, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss those minutes.
Move we approve the minutes of Thursday, September 23rd, 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 6, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 7, approving the order adopting proposed rules and associated legislative report, directing the commission secretary to sign the order on behalf of the commission, and directing commission staff to make the necessary filings to finalize the rule process.
Move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 3.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Move we approve the notices of with agenda items 4 through 6.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Agenda item 7, docket 1 AC 255. Move that we approve the order adopting the proposed rules and associated legislative report, direct the commission secretary to sign the order on behalf of the commission, and direct commission staff to make the necessary filings to finalize the rule process.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, that takes us to our agenda item 8, which is docket 5-FE-101. And as he is the delegated commissioner for Focus on Energy, Commissioner Huebner is going to lead the discussion.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have a memo in front of us related to our current quadrennial planning process, Quad 3, that we are in the middle of. And the memo does a nice job of laying out a number of questions for us. First, it identified, as we've taken up in a few other dockets, that the avoided costs, specifically the avoided energy costs related to natural gas, have declined in the last, or since the plan was put into place based on the potential study. Those avoided costs have come down. They've also identified some methodological and other calculation errors that happened in the process of setting the goal. And so that's the first part of our agenda, is to take up whether or not to make any adjustments related to that. The second part of the agenda is really related to COVID and the impacts of COVID-19 and whether we should have any flexibility or changes in achieving the goals based on the impacts of COVID. So just kind of walking through the avoided energy costs. This is on page 6 of the memo. It cites the updated avoided energy costs adopted in Quad 3 show a significant decrease compared to the values used in Quad 2. The 20-year levelized natural gas avoided energy costs decreased by an average of 38% for non-residential sector and 33% for residential. And the 20-year levelized electric avoided energy costs decreased by an average of 40%. The second adjustment that we can make is based on electric demand, and this is described starting on page 8. Essentially, the table number 11, or table 4, excuse me, is the one that I found to be the most helpful, as it was kind of an apples-to-apples comparison across the two. But ultimately, Cadmus and our team have recommended changing this, that essentially some incorrect assumptions were used when this goal was set, and they are proposing to change this. This would have the effect of reducing the electric demand savings goal by about 22.5%. Then there are some adjustments related to industrial process savings. The first is an incorrect calculation where 4% was used instead of 40%. And then the second one is related on table 7 on page 17. It's sort of a budget adjustment that wasn't backed out of the original calculation. So I think it was described as dense in my briefing, the level of numbers and calculations and things going on here. there's some summary tables describing all of this, and then on page 21, we come to the decisions. And so the staff has done a nice job of sort of breaking this out into a couple of options. One is the calculation errors and whether we want to take an adjustment based on those calculation errors that were found. And then the second would be whether we want to adjust on avoided costs. And that, at least as it was explained to me, is the avoided cost side is a little more of a policy question where, in this quad, we were more granular, we were more data driven. We used those potential study inputs more directly in setting the goals than we had in the past. And so then the question comes up, well, what happens when the underlying data changes? Are we going to modify or not? And that is a little bit more of a policy call. And obviously the others are within our discretion to change too, but they were more clearly calculation errors. So I'm ready to kick this off to you, Chair, but my thoughts are, first, we should adjust definitely the calculation errors. I think that these things do happen. There's a lot of numbers flying, but mistakes happen. But it is, I think, incumbent on us to use the data that's correct. If we use 40% instead of 4 or vice versa, we should adjust for that. So I think that's just a matter of understanding and continually improving, but I would support changing those calculation errors. And then as far as the avoided costs, as you've heard me describe before, I see that as, I would change those two. I would say the world has changed, the numbers are different, we're evaluating quad 3 based on these new avoided costs, and but the goals were set on old avoided costs. So I thought there was a mismatch that makes sense to adjust there. So I was actually at alternative 1, and I would adjust for both of those sets of issues, the calculation errors and the avoided costs. So, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Huebner. I agree with you. I think unlike when we talked about this the last time in terms of the different activities, this is more along the lines of ensuring that the final evaluation aligns with the calculation methodology. And so my understanding is that in 2019, that's when we started to use the revised avoided cost for determination of cost effectiveness. And so I think it makes sense in order to ensure that we're dealing with apples to apples, that we make that revision. And then the methodological change, I agree with you. I think that's just, we need to be sure that we are as accurate as possible. So I would join you at alternative 1.
Commissioner Nowak.
Thank you. Yeah, we, throughout the quadrennium from time to time have to revisit some of the issues that come up, and appreciate that here Cadmus and staff has brought some things to our attention to address. I agree with both of you. It is, I think, absolutely necessary if there's been a calculation error methodologically, or we go back and fix that. So I am good with those changes. I have been torn on that other change with the avoided cost, and ultimately I decided that, the underlying policy, the world has changed since we set those, right? But I kept going back and forth, is the purpose to set a goal to reach a goal, or just set a goal and sometimes you don't meet the goal? Unfortunately, we've seen lots of businesses around the state and country not meet their sales goals from the last few years based on data they knew at the time in 2018 or 19 when this was all set. And so I'm not sure, I understand the need to do it like, I'm not sure it's necessarily apples to apples. The goals are set based on the best information at the time, and sometimes you don't meet your goals. And I don't know that that's going to be a mark on this program if they don't meet them. It's going to be a blip in the calculations going forward to say that was the COVID year, remember? And because a lot of entities are seeing those blips. And so I think for consistency's sake, we should not go back and move the goalposts like we didn't choose to do a couple weeks ago. Because this issue has kind of come up a couple times, and I understand the rationale to do it, but I also believe that I don't know that it helps the program to move the posts either. I don't know that serves anyone as well. So I was at not changing it for the avoided costs. And because the other thing is, well, that is the largest part of the calculation of a cost benefit. I think Cadmus and APTA maybe could have come back forward with a little more, what are the other options? What were the alternative analysis that they went through? Well, there may have been some other, what did they look at it against? And why was this one chosen over the others? I think they should have walked us through that a little more in their what they sent to staff on that. So I guess I'm just not prepared to go there because I don't know what this was checked against. So I will, 3. I think it's 3. Right?
I think 2 would accept the methodological.
Oh, yeah, 2. Sorry. Yep.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, I'm still at alt 1 for myself, and I think one of the things that I did bring up to staff is, we are seeing rising natural gas prices out in the market.
Right.
England is
yes.
having major impacts right now. So the implication of us sort of being more data-driven and riding closer to the data and adjusting the goals could be that in future years the goal to go up.
Well, I thought about that too. Is like, are they gonna come back and ask us to increase the goal someday?
I think that's more of a policy question
Yeah.
we have to address in quad. The next quad is, do we want to sort of stick close to the data and then have those goals changing as the data changes, or are we gonna go with a more fixed approach? And I don't know my thoughts on that yet, but I think it's a question that we're raising here.
Yeah.
So. Chair, did you want to stay at alternative 1?
I do, and I think Commissioner Nowak, you raised really good points, and I also went back and forth because you guys know I brought up the goalposts the last time. I think,
yeah,
but I
thought I might sway you with your own words. Come on.
I think that in this particular case, I'm expecting that the cost effectiveness number is going to go down. And like you said, Commissioner Nowak, that this is going to be viewed as a blip. But I think it's important that we see what the actual number is using the avoided cost. So that then, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we can better tailor the programs. And to your point, I mean, what is the goal? The goal, I think, is to reflect the actual market that we're living in right now and to help businesses and residential customers achieve energy savings. And so in order to do that effectively, we need to be using the right data sets. So in this particular case, I was comfortable adjusting both for the methodological and then for avoided cost.
Okay. So the second issue in front of us then is begun to be laid out then on page 22 and goes to the end of the memo. This is an interrelation between the impacts of COVID on the program and the ability to meet its goals and the minimum performance requirements and the performance goals related to APTA achieving its targets. And there's a contract that we oversee, but is executed between the State Energy Efficiency and Renewables Administrator and APTM as the program administrator. And so, we have flexibility to adjust the goals or to adjust flexibility on the goals, but not direct capability to adjust the contract because the contract is not with us. And I thought that's kind of that was one of my big takeaways with this section. was, number one, we know COVID-19 has impacted everything since it happened. We've made, many adjustments to our regulated industry, and we're seeing sort of the unfurling of the traffic jam of the slowdown, and now we're seeing inflation, products, not being available, et cetera. So we know that those impacts have happened. We know more are to come, and staff lays that out. We're not sure really what the next year and a half looks like either because of availability, pricing, et cetera. Staff has proposed one way to get at this, which is to essentially, let me take one step back. On the achievement of natural gas savings is the more challenging area right now for the program. And the memo outlines why this is, and in particular, they state that the impacts for COVID-19, especially with large energy customers who have historically provided the majority of therm savings for the FOCUS program. And they outlined that one of the paper mills that they had a project with would have saved 4% of all the savings for the year 2020. That paper mill closed because of the economic uncertainty and impact. And so those are things that I see, really as beyond the control, of Aptum to, obviously it's a global pandemic and we know the impacts have been far reaching. I'm okay with the alternative, to add some flexibility, but I'm actually proposing an alternative 4, which would be kind of more directly to address the issues, and that would be to direct the program administrator, which is Aptum, to work with CIRA and our commission staff on a contract amendment language that would essentially adjust the risk and reward, or if necessary, provide flexibility, acknowledging the delay and disruption caused by COVID-19. And then we could come back and look at that amendment. But it's, adjusting the goals is one way to do it, but it may be more direct to do it that way. And one of the things I want to be sure, obviously there's a performance penalty if they underperform, and that's a concern for Aptum, and we understand that. There's a bonus if they do, above and beyond. With COVID, those numbers have probably changed. I don't know what the new numbers would or could be. I want to be sure that there's an incentive for Aptum and the program to continue running to the finish line, to continue performing all the way out of this quad. And so I don't want to just drop the goals or sort of drop the penalty, drop the bonus entirely, at least not at this stage. I'd like there to be more developed on, what does an adjusted set of incentives look like. So that's kind of where I am. Like I said, as a backstop, I think adjusting this flexibility can work. So I can live with alternative 2, but there may be a more direct approach. Chair?
Thanks, Commissioner Hebner. So for this one, the first question I asked in my briefing was, is there a deadband? I was thinking of our fuel rules and earnings sharing mechanisms, right, where there's neither a penalty nor a bonus that kicks in. Because obviously, if they're going to not meet their performance requirement because of COVID, you don't want to unnecessarily penalize them. But at the same time, I'm going to use the goalpost again. At the same time, you also don't want to put them in a position where they're able to get a bonus out of it. There are a lot of companies, a lot of businesses who are struggling, and some of them aren't going to meet their earnings guidance, right? And so I looked at this in a similar way. And I just, where I landed is at alternative 5, which is to do nothing. But I would actually kind of put a flag out there and ask that we look at this in January of 2023, because at that time, as you both indicated, I mean, look at what's happening with natural gas prices. There are still a lot of moving parts that could ultimately impact where they land under the contract. And so my thought was, let's press pause on this particular action item. Let's not make any adjustments right now. Let's wait until January of 2023 to understand more fully the impacts of COVID. And that would then also mean that we could avoid kind of revisiting other impacts, right? Because I can see this coming up in 6 months when we look at natural gas prices or some other bump in the road. So I would propose that in January 2023, after the full quad is over, but before total savings are calculated, that we come and we can have a discussion. But up until that point, I'm at alternative 5 where I would take no action.
Commissioner Hebers, too, I think so I'm understanding your alternative to what you propose. So would you do that in addition to adjusting the minimum performance requirements, also take a look at adjusting the penalties and rewards, or are you saying one or the other?
I can be open to either or both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the goals is something we have direct control over, and the performance, penalty or bonus is indirect because it's with zero.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, yeah. Happy to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and I, would like to see Sierra engaged on this perhaps a little more. I mean, this is their contract, right? So they should, the one hesitation I have is, us ordering to third party, other parties to go and present us with amendments, although we oversee the contract. And ultimately, my thinking is going to kind of be in line with what I just spoke about before. I understand COVID has put some negative pressures on some of the performance goals, but what I don't have here is, is there anything that has put positive performance? What's it weighed against? What is it netted against? Because adjust a goal based on something that is still fluid I'm a little leery to do that because we don't know where it's all going to end up. And again, I don't, like Chair Bach said, I don't want them to move this and then they earn the bonus just as a result because we then moved it. So I'm going to join Chair Bach at alternative 5 and not take action. I think the proposal to take it up once we learn a little more, not just the impacts of COVID, but everything else, the stimulus money coming in, the other growth in certain sectors. I think we should look at the adjustments based more holistically rather than one, well, it's a big event, rather than look at it that way.
Yep, that makes sense. I know Optum, is sort of staring at that penalty, knowing it's going to be very hard to reach the goals. And so that's why I thought, kind of reopening that conversation between them and Sierra. I understand, it is indirect.
Right.
I guess I would have that window open if they feel like there's some reason they can't wait till January 2023. Maybe make us aware of that. Mm-hmm. I guess I would propose that. Just because for them, that's after their period of performance. So, if we're going to enforce that penalty, it's going to be too late for them to do anything about it in January 2023. And I know that's a concern for them. So I don't know if that needs a second opinion or not. They're free to amend the contract and propose changes to us as they wish. So I don't want to put anything in an order requiring that. Okay.
So, right.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
I'm going to stay where I'm at.
Okay.
But you want to just do one motion?
Yeah, I'll dissent on the first one, you dissent on the second part? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Docket 5 FE 101, I move that the Commission direct the Division of Digital Access, Consumer and Environmental Affairs to draft an order consistent with our discussion today.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that concludes our official business for today. The next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 7th, 2021 at 10:30 a.m. May we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, October 7th. 2021.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone.
Aye.
Goodbye.